Yes! Okay, now we can get started. Spooky season is upon us! And I am thrilled because this is one season that I finally have off. Usually I work spooky season, but I don't this time. So I am very, very happy to get back into costume making. But last year I wanted to make a Halloween costume for me and my man to go to the Magic Castle. Now I am a little bit of a hoarder, but I'm getting better. She is reformed. She has more organization now. But I wanted to use up a lot of the scraps that I have, and what better way than making a ragdoll dress? Now, of course, I can't just make a copy of any one character. I have to put my own spin on it. So let's jump over to the iPad and see what I have in mind for this dress. I wanted this dress to have a vintage feel and be more flattering because I don't think the shift shape is very flattering on my body. And to give it this vintage feel, I went with a flared skirt and a princess seam bodice, but I also wanted to have these beautiful little butterfly sleeves. Like, she just tacked on as much fabric as she could into the sleeves. And I wanted to be as practical with all of the details as possible, like sewing every single decorative stitch. I started by making a mock-up of a sort of swing dress with this darling little butterfly sleeve that I've used lots of times in my shirts. And then I did some alterations to the fit because it wasn't quite right, and if I'm being honest, it needs a few more little alterations. But once I got it mostly there, then I put it on my dress form and I started using Sharpies and colored markers to mark out where all the different pattern pieces needed to be. Now, what's really, really important when you're doing something like this is registration keys and labeling. You need to put these hash marks through the pattern pieces so you know where they need to line up. And you also need to mark what pattern goes to what pattern. So here you'll see I did like A to A, B to B, and so on and so forth. Once I had everything looking how I wanted, I made sure to go back and color in each of the pattern pieces so I knew what color they needed to be when I cut them out. From there, I cut apart the dress and transferred each pattern piece onto paper where I added about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then I spent hours meticulously cutting all of my pattern pieces, making sure that I had everything ready. And I don't know what's spookier, Halloween season or the blonde dysmorphia that I had this time last year, because yikes. That is not cute. Just that alone was a lot of work, but from there I then had to cut everything out again in my final colored fabric. Now, I already had this beautiful dark teal with this fun pattern on it, a beautiful dusty pink, and this fun burgundy with black swirl cotton, and I knew all these would be great for the dress. And this is where the real horrors began. I needed a yellow fabric that was desaturated enough to complement all the other fabrics, and well, I had to commit some murder on the most popular dress on this channel, my Belle dress. I've worn her so much that she kind of needs a refresh already. And so I cut off the flounce of the gold dress and used it to cut out the yellow pattern pieces for this dress, which honestly I love because I love the idea of recycling and upcycling fabrics. So not only were these curtains, but then they were a ball gown, and now they're going to be a ragdoll dress, which is very satisfying. Next was the fun challenge of sewing everything together and hoping that everything lined up nicely, and it actually did pretty well. Thankfully, I had enough registration marks to make it pretty easy to put together. And you know, every single time I make a video, I try to do those silly snap transitions that just magically make the pieces come together, but I can never remember to snap after I've finished sewing the piece, so it's just like snap, on to the next step. I just get so hyper-focused on my sewing that I'm just enjoying the vibes. I'm not thinking about the transitions and stuff. For the swirly pink parts, I could have embroidered it by hand, or I could have painted the pieces before I sewed them together, but I knew all of those would have kind of a too saturated look. So the best look that I found was actually just a chunky Sharpie, and being able to draw it directly onto the dress after it was assembled meant that all of the swirls lined up and I didn't have to worry about extra pattern matching. And so that came out really, really nice. For all of the stitching, I used this really thick embroidery thread because I wanted the stitching to really stand out. I don't like the painted on look. I want everything to just have texture and look like it was, you know, created in reality rather than this sort of illustrative look. And doing these stitches took quite some time, but it worked out really nice. It looked so beautiful, and just having that little three-dimensional pop I think adds a lot to the dress. For the polka dots on the hip, I had some little scraps of black leather in my stash, and I just cut out some little circles and whip stitched those on with the same stitching technique that I used for the rest of the dress and the bodysuit. And I think that contrast between that kind of brocade and the leather looks really, really nice. I didn't go totally totally accurate to the pattern because I couldn't see where some of her placements were, and I also wanted to go with what I kind of had fabric for and what I had space for and what looked nice on the dress itself. Now she does have a striped fabric and a checkerboard fabric on her dress, but I really wanted to use just what I had on hand, and I didn't want to be doing a bunch of painting because I have done that before. And so I just used strips of this table runner that I found from the dollar store that had spider webs on it, and just that texture and extra pattern just adds so much dimension, and I think it looks so stinking cute. I love layering fabrics to create more visual interest in my dresses. And all of those I just basted to the original pattern pieces. I didn't initially plan for it, but the dress definitely needed like a raggedy hem, so I took my pinking shears and cut little triangles into the hem to make it all jagged, as well as into the sleeve of the dress. I originally wanted to get this suit by We Love Colors. It's a little bit on the expensive side, but it is all completely knit, so there are no seams except for up the back, I believe, which would be perfect because it would look really cohesive and finished, but they were out of stock. So instead I went to Amazon and I bought a cheap bodysuit and I custom tailored it to my body. I cut off the socks because I wasn't going to need them since I was wearing socks and shoes anyways. And then I used some Rit Dye Poly to get the perfect baby blue color. I used the cut off socks from the bodysuit to test my colors before putting the whole thing in, and it came out spectacularly. Now I did need to trim up the fingers because they were really long and a little bit thick, which, you know, I have fairly spindly fingers, and it came out so perfect. I went ahead and added some actual seams by just kind of doing a pin tuck on the inside. That way the stitching over the top made sense, and I just kind of did it wherever it looked like it needed it, as well as I installed some zippers along the wrists so that I could get my hands out, and added some faux stitching there with some thick black embroidery thread. Now I've never liked how the parks do their makeup, and I wanted to do something that is my own because I want to be more original. And I was really inspired by Kiko Lin's like sad clown cloud makeup. And so I went off of that for kind of the shape of the face and the eyes. And I think it came out really stinking cute. Now I didn't feel like wearing the whole bodysuit and the whole makeup to Magic Castle, so I just did like a contour of blue. But I'll show you how I do my whole makeup for the actual shoot tomorrow. For the makeup, I started by blocking out my eyebrows using an Elmer's glue stick, and then I went in and powdered it. Then I added an LA Girl concealer in white to block out my eyes. I didn't want to do anything else before I set my eyes because there was going to be a lot of work done on this. I channeled my best Trixie Mattel for the under eye, but I made it droop towards the outside instead of drooping towards the inside like hers to really emphasize that sad doll look. Once I had that shape carved out, I used the LA Girl concealer in white and blue to make my own foundation color that matched my bodysuit, and then I used the blue concealer straight to make a contour, taking my time to really blend everything out, and especially blend that contour in the eye down the nose. Once I liked how everything was blended, I powdered everything and went in with the dark blue eyeshadow to start carving out her eyebrows, and I wanted her to have a little bit of that Victorian haunted doll look, so I added a little bit of a cool toned dusty rose blush. I created real stitches by putting a dot of eyelash glue on each side of her scars and taking the same thread that I used on my dress for the decorative elements. If you'd like to help support this channel and get yourself some goodies, I have my corset earrings available in my shop, as well as multiple digital download sewing patterns. From there, I took some really long and spidery eyelashes and applied them and used just a little bit of eyeliner to blend it out. Added some whiteout contacts and a red lip, and she was ready for her spooky debut. And if you're enjoying this video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. And that's my ragdoll dress. If you would like the pattern that I made as a print at home sewing pattern, let me know in the comments down below and I'd be happy to make that happen. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe and have a great day. Bye. This is Halloween, this is Halloween, 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 Halloween. Do 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 do.